When your own child tells you that you're too ugly to stand beside him on the happiest day of his life, you don't just hear words. You hear a blade slicing through the bond you thought was unbreakable. That's what my son told me, and I remember it word for word. Mom, you can't come to the wedding. You'll embarrass me. You'll ruin everything. You're too ugly. At first, I thought it was a joke. How could the little boy I once rocked to sleep, the child I carried through sickness, poverty, and heartbreak, now look me in the eye and say something so cruel? But there was no humor in his voice, only coldness, only shame. I wasn't born into riches. I wasn't glamorous. I was just me. A single mother who worked 2 jobs to put food on the table. I scrubbed floors in the morning and packed boxes at night. I patched up old clothes instead of buying new ones. I went without meals so my son could eat. And every time he smiled, every time he hugged me, it felt worth it. I told myself, one day he'll understand. One day he'll know everything I sacrificed was for him. And in my heart, I believed he loved me for it. Growing up, he was my pride. When he was little, he'd run to me after school with drawings in his hands, shouting, "Look, Mommy!" When he was sick, I stayed up all night cooling his forehead, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart, Mama's here." When he graduated high school, I cried so hard the teachers had to hand me tissues. That boy was my whole world. But now, that boy was gone, replaced by a man who looked at me not with love, but with disgust. I still remember the day he introduced me to his fiancée. She was beautiful, polished, graceful. Her family came from wealth, elegant clothes, perfect smiles, the kind of people who looked at me like I was invisible. At the dinner table, I tried to smile, tried to fit in, but I noticed the glances, the way her future mother-in-law's nose wrinkled when she looked at my plain dress, the way her fiancé's smile tightened when I stumbled over a fancy word in conversation. And my son said nothing. He didn't defend me. He just sat there, pretending not to notice, as though he too was embarrassed by me. The final blow came a week before the wedding. He called me over, and I arrived with excitement. I thought he wanted to include me in the preparations, maybe ask for my blessing. Instead, he sat me down, cleared his throat, and delivered the cruelest speech of my life. "Mom, you know I love you, but you don't fit in. The wedding's going to be elegant, formal, and you'll stand out. People will talk. Please understand. You can't come." I stared at him, speechless. Tears burned my eyes, but I held them back, searching his face for some hint of guilt, of love, of hesitation. But he just looked away, as though he too was embarrassed by me. And then came the words that shattered me completely. "You'll ruin my big day. You'll ruin everything. You're too ugly." I don't remember how I got home that night. The world blurred around me. I stumbled through the door of my small apartment, collapsed on the couch, and for the first time in years, I sobbed like a child. It wasn't the word ugly that hurt the most. It was knowing that my son, the boy I sacrificed everything for, saw me as a burden, a stain, a shadow to be hidden. All the sleepless nights, all the empty stomachs, all the years of holding him close, telling him he was my everything. And this was my reward? But pain has a way of sharpening you. As I lay there, clutching my pillow, something hardened inside me. If my son truly thought I was too ugly for his wedding, then fine. I would not beg, I would not crawl, but I would leave him something he'd never forget, something that would make him smile one last time. The night after my son's words, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the dim light above me, hands trembling around a cold cup of tea. His voice replayed in my head again and again. "You'll ruin everything. You're too ugly." The words dug into me like claws, leaving wounds I wasn't sure would ever heal. By morning, my eyes were swollen. Sandra, my oldest friend, stopped by after work. She took one look at me and frowned. "What happened?" she asked, her voice full of concern. I tried to brush it off, but Sandra knew me too well. When I finally told her every detail, every cruel word, she slammed her hand on the table. "How dare he? After everything you've done for him, the nerve! If my son ever—" She stopped, shaking her head furiously. "Marianne, you can't go. Promise me you won't go to that wedding." Her anger was like fire, but it couldn't burn away my sorrow. "I know," I whispered. "I know I shouldn't. But he's my son, Sandra. My only son. I can't just stop loving him." Sandra leaned closer, her eyes softening. "Love doesn't mean letting him humiliate you. Don't let him step on your heart again." I nodded, but inside, the storm raged on. That night, I opened an old wooden box I kept under my bed. Inside were scraps of my life, photographs, little drawings, birthday cards, and letters written in a child's messy handwriting. "Mommy, you're the best cook ever. Thank you for fixing my toy. I love you to the moon." My tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. How did that sweet little boy grow into a man who saw me as nothing more than an embarrassment? But even as my heart cracked, I couldn't deny it. I still wanted him to be happy. So, I made a decision. I would give him a gift. Not money, I had none to spare. Not jewelry, I owned nothing worth keeping. But I did have one thing. A small gold watch that belonged to his father, the man who left us when my son was just a baby. I had saved it all these years, hoping one day I could pass it down. I polished it until it gleamed, my reflection warped in its curved glass. It wasn't much, but it was a piece of history, a piece of family. I wrapped it carefully in soft cloth and placed it in a small box. And then I wrote a letter. The pen trembled in my hand as I poured my heart onto the paper. I told him how proud I was of him, how I would always love him, no matter what, how my greatest joy had been being his mother. And finally, I wrote the words that nearly tore me apart. I will not come to your wedding, but I hope with this gift you can smile one last time, knowing your mother loves you. When I finished, my tears had soaked through the page. I folded it gently, slipped it into the box with the watch, and tied it with a simple ribbon. The next few days were torture. Everywhere I went, I saw signs of his wedding. People in town whispered about the big event, about how lucky he was to be marrying into such a wealthy family. Sandra checked on me daily, reminding me to stay strong. But every night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Part of me wanted to storm into that wedding, stand up in front of everyone and shout, "This is my son. I raised him. Without me, none of this would exist." But another part, the softer part, just wanted to see him happy, even if it meant stepping aside, even if it meant erasing myself from his story. On the morning of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror. For a moment, I imagined what it would be like to put on my best dress, walk into that hall, and take my place as the mother of the groom. But then I heard his voice again, sharp and cold. "You'll ruin everything." And I knew I couldn't face another rejection. So instead, I dressed simply, a plain blouse, a dark skirt, and my worn coat. I tucked the small gift box into my bag and left my apartment. The sky was overcast, heavy with gray clouds. It felt fitting, because today I wasn't going to a celebration. I was going to say goodbye.
The church bells rang in the distance as I approached the venue. From across the street, I could see it. A grand hall decorated with flowers and silk ribbons, white chairs lined in neat rows, and guests laughing in their finest clothes. For a moment, I froze. This should have been my place. I should have been inside, seated proudly in the front row, watching my son start a new life. Instead, I was outside, clutching a small gift box in my bag like it was the only thing holding me together. I didn't go in. I couldn't. Instead, I stood near the entrance, half hidden by the trees, watching as people walked past me in glittering gowns and tailored suits. None of them gave me a second glance. And then I saw him, my son. He stepped out of a sleek car, dressed in a crisp black suit, his hair perfectly styled. He looked radiant, happy, proud. My breath caught in my throat. For a split second, I didn't see the man who rejected me. I saw the little boy who once ran into my arms with scraped knees. The boy who used to press kisses to my cheeks and say, "You're the prettiest mom in the world." Memories flooded me, each one like a knife and a balm all at once. His first day of school, clutching my hand so tightly. His teenage years, sulking but still eating the meals I scraped together. The night he graduated, when he whispered, "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." And now, here he was, so far from me. I watched him greet his fiancée, her beauty dazzling in her wedding gown. He smiled at her, wide and genuine, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. And in that moment, I knew. This was what I came for. Not to sit inside, not to demand recognition, but to see him happy, just once more, before letting go.
I stayed until the ceremony began. From the edge of the garden, I could hear the vows echoing faintly through the speakers. Promises of love, of loyalty, of forever. I didn't cry. I simply stood still, holding the gift box in my hands, whispering softly to myself, "Smile, my son. Smile one last time." When the ceremony ended, I approached one of the servers at the back. "Excuse me," I said gently, handing her the box. "Could you please make sure the groom receives this? Tell him it's from someone who loves him very much." She looked at me curiously, but nodded. I didn't wait to see him open it. I didn't want to, because this wasn't about me anymore. This was my farewell. As I walked away from the venue, the sound of laughter and music faded behind me. The world seemed strangely quiet, as though it knew a chapter of my life had just closed. The weight in my chest was heavy, but beneath it was peace. Because I had done what I came to do. I had seen my son happy. I had given him my final gift, and now I could let go. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the silence pressing against me. I imagined him opening the box. I imagined his hands trembling as he read my letter, as he saw the gold watch that belonged to his father. I imagined his smile softening, maybe even a tear slipping down his cheek. And though I would never know for sure, I believed it. Because in my heart, I knew the truth. Even if he thought I was too ugly for his wedding, I was still beautiful enough to love him in silence.
The wedding reception was filled with lights, laughter, and music. Guests toasted with champagne, the couple danced under a canopy of stars, and everyone clapped with joy. But then, someone handed my son a small box. He didn't know who it was from. He didn't recognize the handwriting on the tag that simply said, "For you, from someone who always loved you first." Curious, he opened it. Inside was a letter, neatly folded, and beneath it, a gold watch, his father's watch, the one he thought had been lost years ago. He froze. Memories rushed into him, his childhood, his late father, and me. The nights I stayed awake sewing his school uniforms, the times I skipped meals so he could have enough to eat, the moments I clapped the loudest at every small achievement of his. His hands trembled as he opened the letter. It wasn't long. It simply said, "My son, I won't be there to see you walk into this new life, but I wanted you to carry a piece of your father with you. I hope your marriage brings you the joy you deserve. Remember, no matter what you think of me, I will always love you. Mom." His chest tightened. He looked around the hall, scanning every corner, hoping to see me, but I was already gone. And for the first time that night, his smile faded. Because he realized, in pushing me away, in silencing me out of shame, he had also silenced the one person who loved him most purely. Days passed. He tried to call me. He sent messages. But I didn't answer. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because I had already said goodbye. I had given him my blessing, my gift, my final smile, and now I had to protect what was left of me. Weeks later, my son showed up at my door. His face was tired, his voice low. "Mom, I'm sorry." I looked at him silently, not with hatred, but with a calm distance that comes from wounds too deep to reopen. "You didn't just shut me out of your wedding. You shut me out of your life." Tears welled in his eyes. I was wrong. I let pride blind me. I forgot who stood by me when no one else did. "Please, can we start over?" I held his gaze, and for the first time, I saw not just my son, but a man humbled by regret. I didn't hug him that day. I didn't rush to forgive, because forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a journey. But I did let him in. I made tea. We sat in silence, the same silence that once broke me, but now felt like the start of healing. And that's when I understood the truth. This wasn't a story of ugliness or rejection. It was a story of rediscovery, of a mother remembering her worth, and a son learning the price of forgetting it. So the moral is, never underestimate the quiet strength of a mother's love. You can shame her, reject her, even try to erase her, but her love will still find its way to you. And sometimes, by the time you realize it, all you're left with is a gift, a memory, and the hope that she'll let you back in. Because beauty isn't in smooth skin or youthful smiles. Beauty is in sacrifice. Beauty is in resilience. And the most beautiful person in your life may be the one you least appreciate until it's almost too late. So now when I sit with my tea, I don't think about the day my son rejected me. I think about the day I found peace, strength, and dignity. Because in the end, I wasn't too ugly for his wedding. I was too beautiful for his blindness. And that is enough.